So section 11, at this point we're going to attach the castle to the frame that we've built. And if it's not clear at this point, because the loom is foldable, if I can manage this, it folds kind of like that. So what we're doing is attaching through that hole into this, what would you call that? Bent, zigzag, dogleg slot on the side of the frame. So the first thing we do is, it's another of these another of these hexagonal bolts into a round hole. I think it's easiest if you do it, you can't see what I've just done there, but if you get your bolt to come out through this hole on the side. Okay. And what we want to do is again knock that bolt in so it is flush with the side of the castle. The risk of it not being flush is that the shafts could catch on it. So it's more hammering. Did that my bit of wood, did I? That's pretty good. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Okay, so once I've got those bolts in, then I need one of these washers and these little knurled knobs, and then that goes on the outside so that that can be loosened or tightened as the need be. And then you can't see this, but I'll do it on the other side as well. That's section 11. Section 12 then, we are attaching these support rails on the side to the top of the castle. So it's one of those 1.25 inch machine screws that's going through that hole into that hole on the type of the castle, on the top, not the type of the castle. You might find you just need to wiggle the castle in a bit. So this one, because this needs to pivot as the loom folds, doesn't want to be ultra tight. That'll do. Same on this side. There we are, that's section 12 done. This is step 13. We're taking one of these heddle frame ends. You'll see it's got a small hole at one end and one of these short machine screws, and that is screwed in there, leaving 0.5 centimetre, 5mm gap. There we go. And then you need to do that another 15 times. That's step 13. Alright, so this is section 14 and this is a hard one. So what we're aiming to do is get the heddles on each of the frames like that. Okay, if you have a 16-inch loom, then you need to put one of these, and if you have a 32-inch loom, you need to put two of these on each frame. The fun starts if you have a 24-inch loom, because then you need to put 1.5 of these on each of the frames. This caused a bit of head scratching when we first did this, but here is how we ended up doing. So, put half a frame together, and these don't fasten in, they just kind of slot in. Then let's take our heddle. So what you want to do is get your fingers and thumbs between the two green ties, the green cable ties, like that, and then thread those over the end, over your rods, like that. So that is one set of heddles. You will find that they sometimes pop out. Perseverance is the order of the day there. And then I'm going to do the same with the other. So same approach, thumb and fingers between the green ties and thread them, not very well, on. So now I've got two bunches on one frame. Now I'm going to put two other rods parallel to my existing rods through the same hole, and just because it makes it a bit easier, I'm going to put the end on those other two rods. So if you like, I've got half of those two frames in. And what I'm then going to do is cut through these loops at the end. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to explain why it's not as silly as it might seem. So I'm going to cut all those loops, and if you get all of them at the first go, you'll be doing better than I have. There we go, I think that's all of them, and I'm going to do the same on the other end. And note, I'm doing this before taking any of the green ties off. Now, if you've never done this before, you think, well, hang on, doesn't that mean they'll all fall off? But they won't, because of the way that these heddles are constructed. So, having cut the ends, I'm going to take all the green ties off, because this bunch of heddles I'm going to split into two. So if I just then start easing these along, you'll see that even though I've cut a loop there, and that's where I've cut, there is still fastened together, so they still hold around the rods, top and bottom. So there are 40 in each of these bundles, so to halve it, amazingly, I need to move 20 across. So I'm going to move 20 from one frame onto another. And having separated them out, I'm moving one half right to the end of my frame. And the other half to the other frame. Ta-da! And I've now got one and a half bunches on this frame here, and I've just got half a bunch on that frame. Ooh. So I'm going to thread my other set over there, and then once I've done that, put the ends on. You'll find that when you get these on, they do kind of stiffen up a bit. If you end up with this kind of arrangement, then you'll find that they're very difficult to put apart. So just try and get those at a right angle. And there we are. So you need to do that for all 8 frames. And that is the end of step 14. Right, so step 15. The first thing we're going to do is fold the loom flat so that we can put the frames in it. So we just need to loosen each knob, and without chapping your finger like that, manner of Marie Antoinette or something like that, hold that flat like that. Then we're going to slide each of our frames in with the screws at the top. They have to go in like that. So we're going to stack them all up there on top of each other. What you might find is you can get about 4 frames in, and after that point you can't get the other one at the right angle, in which case I found it easiest just to lift the ones you've already put in and slide them underneath. There we go, that's step 15, all the frames are in. Right, so step 16, we're going to attach this thicker cord to each of the frames that we've just put in, these frames, and thread it up through the top of the castle. Now, just to avoid confusion, that looks like a fault in the cord, but in fact it's just 2 cords that are stuck together. So you should have 8 of these that length cords. Now it is a kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, punctured hole, perforated, one of those cords that has holes along its length, and I am going to put that hole over the little screw that is already, about 3 steps ago, screwed into the top of the frame. So I'm going to start at the bottom, which is frame number 1. Now, the instructions say this is best done with the castle upright, but I don't think it is. So I'm leaving it down. So I'm picking something like the third one, the third hole in from the end of the cord, and then just pushing it down over the screw. And then this is the first frame, so it goes through the first hole, the nearest hole to the front, and just pulls through. And then I'm going round, and then the nearest hole to the front on the other side, and again fitting that with some difficulty. There we go, over the frame. Okay, so then we just work our way up. I'm on number 3 now, exactly the same. Approach, and then through the corresponding hole, so the third frame, the third hole from the front, and then back through the third hole on the other side, the screw, and that's the third one done. So just finishing off, it's worth emphasizing that you need to get these through the right holes, because otherwise bad things will happen. There we go, and that is step 17, no, step 16 done. So this is step 17. We're going to put the loom, the castle, back up again. Right hand under the frames, because otherwise they'll all fall out, they'll get cross. There we go, and then just let them rest on the floor. And what we're going to do then, when I've disentangled that, is each of these cords is going to be threaded through one of these holes and around the lever. So there are no numbers written on the levers here, but they go from left to right. That's number 1, 2, 3, etc. So the cord from your first frame, which is going through the holes at the front, needs to go through number 1. We're going to thread this loop through the grommet. I've managed to do that without the threading hook, but you can use the threading hook if you want, and through the hole in the lever. Again, I've managed to do that without the threading hook, and then it needs to be pulled up and over the top of the lever like that. And you may find that you need to adjust it at this point. I think the best way to do it is to pull the lever to its up position, so the lever's down, the heddle's up, the frame is up rather. And then from the back side, you want the top of the frame to be 10 centimetres below the top of the castle. 10 millimetres below the top of the castle. 10 centimetres might not work very well. 10 millimetres, 1 centimetre below the top of the castle. So if you do need to adjust it, I won't do that because it's too fiddly to film, then you may find that you need to either cut the end of your cord a little to fit it right, or move the end further up so that the screw is further up the string, so it pulls it tighter. I hope that makes sense. So once you've done that, you might find that you need to alter the string, the cord length somewhat. What we want to end up is, when the lever is down and the frame is up, then you want the top of the frame to be, and you can't see it, I realise from this camera angle, about 1 centimetre below the top of the castle there. And to do that, the easiest way to do it is just to move the string on the screw that we did in the previous bit, so it is further up the length of the string. You don't need to alter both ends at the risk of saying the obvious. You can just extend one end and pull the cord through till it's the right height. Okay, and then we just need to do that for all the other 7. So you can see I've now finished attaching all these cords to the levers. You almost certainly will need to even them up. I've managed to do that reasonably well here. Evening them up, I think, is a bit fiddly. The way I have done it is to not touch that end, to put the lever in the frame up position, pull the other end, take the other end off the screw, pull the other end through, and then note which of the holes my screw needs to be. Then drop the frame into the down position, which makes it much easier to fasten on the string back onto the screw, and then check again. So what you should end up with is all 8 frames, or however many frames your loom has got, with a small space, a centimetre or so, between the top of the frame end and the bottom of the castle top. And that, and you might need a lie down after that one, I did, is stage 17. Alright, so this is stage 18. These are the sides of the beater, and the first thing we're going to do is put these little rubber feet into the straight end of it, where there is already a little screw hole. So that's it should be the last of your little machine screws. If you still have some left after this, I'm just checking that I haven't. But if you do, you might just want to check that you haven't missed anything. Okay, so the next step is what it rather glibly in the instructions says, is to assemble the beater frame. I don't think this is terribly clear in the instructions, I'm afraid. You should have 2 substantial bits of timber left, and if you've got more things have gone very badly wrong. But if you have got two, then they should be like that. One of them has large holes that go all the way through at either end, and the other one has small holes that don't go all the way through. So we're going to do the second one of those that I've mentioned first, and that is that way around. So I'm just screwing with the last of the wood screws, 1¼ inch wood screws. My recommendation in general for this would be to have a slightly bigger table than this one, so that the loom doesn't keep falling off the end of it. There we go. So that's one side. Then we need to fit the other side of the reed holder. Now the best way to do this, I think, is your coach bolt. What do Ashford call it? I think that's a coach bolt. They just call it a bolt. So that needs to go through the underside of your rail, and it will sit kind of proud of the surface initially, as you can see. Hopefully that's not in there. And then up through the slot in the beater side, and then again on the other side. Okay, and then you want a washer and a wing nut, and as we tighten the wing nut, it should pull the other side of the coach bolt flush with the surface. So I'm not worried about exactly where that is, I'm just tightening that. I can kind of feel it going in. It is. So keep tightening that until it's tight enough. You can see then that that coach bolt is flush. The bottom of the bolt head is flush with the surface. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. If it starts to make unpleasant noises, then stop. That's pretty much there. So that is stage 18. The last bit actually is to leave the wing nut as I've got it there, with the wings in line with the side of your beaters. Although obviously we haven't got the reed in, but when you reed it in, then you want those parallel to that, just to avoid it snagging anything when you fold the loom up. Right, so that's 18. So step number 19, what we're going to do now is fasten this beater frame to these support arms here, so that it swings like that. And you need the last of your, what are those, 2-inch bolts, 2 washers and a nut, and it goes bolt, washer, end of the beater frame, washer, nut, and the same on the other side. Bolt, bolt, washer, beater frame, washer, nut. So this needs to be done up not too tightly with your little spanner. And it's another of these half a mil. Now, some time ago when I started building this, when I didn't have this enormous beard, I wondered why there was 2 spanners, and this of course is why. So you need to hold one of those and then just tighten the other one up nice and gently. I'd say that's good, maybe a little bit more, a bit of paper's fallen out. Because obviously this wants to be able to swing freely. Okay, let's see what the other one's like. Alright, so the beater should swing freely at this point without hitting the sides. And it doesn't quite, as you can probably hear. Oh yes it does. There we go, lovely. Alright, so that's step 19. So I think I said step 19 was done a moment ago, but I lied. So what we're going to do is fashion this stretchy cord through that hole and that hole there in the top of the castle. Any of you who've watched any of these other videos that I've done will recall that knots are definitely not, no pun intended, my strong point. So here I'm going to prove it again. I might possibly get away with just one little knot in that, let's hope so. Yep, I'm not entirely sure how tight this should be, if I'm honest, so I'm assuming it should be so that the beater is reasonably held in there. And at this point I think it would have been better if we'd have done this the other way around. So what I'm doing now, which you can't see, is tying a knot, equally badly I might add, in the back of this. That holds it in. And I've done it. That's not bad. So it's not too strong. You don't need to be the Incredible Hulk to pull it. There we go. So that's one side. Going to do it again on the other side, and then we definitely are done with step 19. Final part, we're going to attach the warp sticks front and back. It's worth saying, just for the avoidance of confusion, that the loom, or this loom, comes with 5 warp sticks. We are only attaching one to the back and one to the front. The others are used in the warping process, if you're not familiar with that. So it also comes with a number of lengths of string. And what we need to do is fold your length of string, if you can fold string, loop your length of string double so it is like that. And you've got a loop at one end. And then, using your double-ended threading stick, threading hook, I'm pulling that loop through the roller, and then the other double end I'm threading back up through that loop. If you can't see exactly what I'm doing on the video, then the leaflet is very clear on this. So it's easiest, I think, if you do all 5 of these first. The other thing that's worth saying at this point is make sure that you are on the right side of the loom. So I'm doing the back of the loom first, so the levers are on the front. It's easy just to do the wrong way round, and then tears and frustration will result. At this point I've got all the strings tied onto the back roller, and then starting with the center one, it comes, the double string comes up over the back beam and then down through the warp stick, down through the warp stick, and then up each side of the warp stick, each side of the string that you've just brought through, and then a nice little granny knot. There we go, and that's our first tie on. Just need to then tie the other 4 If you have got a friend or relative to hold this, the warp stick for you while you tie the other 4 on, then that just does make it a little bit easier. Alright, so that's the back warp stick done. First part of putting the front warp stick on is identical to the back warp. So on the roller, I'm just pulling a loop through as before. I'll just do that again. I'll put in a loop through as before. And then the other 2 ends under the roller and through that loop. Alright, so I'm going to do this in easy stages because, as mentioned before, I'm rubbish at knots. So I'm starting on the centre one, and I am just giving myself, pulling that round the front beam, and then at the 2 fingers, and then putting a knot like that. Alright, so that's step 1 of step 20. Right, so what we're now going to do with these 2 ends is put one of them down through the hole and the other one up through the hole. So I'm going to start off by splitting them in 2, and then that one is going down through the hole and the other one is going up through the hole like that. So you've got it kind of in a figure of 8 round it, and then I'm pulling that back beam up to the knot that I tied before, and then I'm doing another knot tying that other knot, just pushing that down so it's on the other side of my warp stick. There we go. What we've done now is tied the other 4 strings on. As before, if you've got someone that can hold the warp stick for you whilst you tie the other ones on, then that makes life a bit easier. What you should have when this is done is that the warp stick should be parallel with the front beam. So it's not, let me get something to point, it's not this back knot here that's super critical, it's the front knot there, 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 that is controlling, as it were, how far the warp stick is away. So the last thing we need to do, and this is easier if you lift the stick over and lie it down so you're not faffing about with it in midair, is to tie a loop in the end of your string, and Ashford suggests that you use a stick shuttle to space that out. I've got a very short one here. There were longer ones that are all the same width, so just for making the ease of filming. So I'm just putting the 2 ends round either side of my warp stick and tying a knot and another knot. There we are, and then the warp stick comes out. So last thing, we're going to put the reed in, and that is done by just loosening off the knot, those wing nuts there. There we go, letting that drop off and then tightening the wing nuts up. If you remember from step whatever it was, your wing nut when tightened should be aligned here so that they don't stick out the side. And there we are, one fully built 8-shaft loom. it will take you quite a while. We've been filming this while we're doing it, which doesn't aid, and it's taken us about 6.5 hours. In fact, it's the morning after now. So don't expect to do this in an hour. I dare say if you had for some reason to build several of them, you would get faster as you went along. But we are all done. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have watched it and have some suggestions on how any part of it could be improved, then please leave us a comment so that us and others can benefit from it as well. And I think that's all for now. We'll see you soon. Thanks very much.